This episode is brought to you by the Regional Air Quality Council. This summer, go wild for Front Range air quality. When you're parked in parking lots, at the trailhead, or when picking someone up, turn off your car and don't idle with the AC on to help reduce ground level ozone. Did you know that idling your car for just 1 minute creates about 150 balloons worth of air pollution? Yikes! Learn more ways to help improve air quality in the Front Range at simplestepsbetterair.org. And you can sign up for summer ozone alerts to know when it matters most by texting Better Air CO to 21000. This episode is brought to you by the Central City Opera. This season features something for everyone. For first-time opera goers, The Barber of Seville is perfect. It's a funny and fast rom-com featuring well-known songs. Or check out Once Upon a Mattress, a classic Broadway musical for the whole family. Tickets start at just $34, and listeners can use code CityCast to get 20% off select dates. Just go to centralcityopera.org/citycast to learn more. The festival starts in less than a month. Get your tickets before they're gone. Today on CityCast Denver. Does the city have a violent crime problem? Will more officers downtown make people feel safer? Should we be worried about ICE having access to citywide surveillance data? Denver Police Chief Ron Thomas joins me to talk flock cameras, Do Better Denver's constant complaining, and answer your questions about police brutality case payouts, graffiti and rhino, and more. Today is Monday, June 9th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Chief Ron Thomas, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you.
So I want to start with Flock, the traffic cameras DPD uses, because they've been controversial in Denver lately over concerns about surveillance and data integrity. Can you explain what exactly Flock is and how it works?
So Flock is a system that we have used for automatic license plate readers. And so that's primarily what they do for us is they capture license plates by taking a photograph of the back end of a vehicle, and then those images are maintained in a database, and then we're able to search that database in order to look for vehicles that we're looking for. And so how that works is, if we're looking for a stolen car or a car that was used in a violent crime, officers or investigators would enter into a search engine. The reason for the search, they would include, the case number if they have one, the specific justification for the search, which generally would be, looking for, a suspect in a crime. And it would, there's an algorithm that they would look for that license plate and tell you the cameras that captured that plate. And so we have used it in order to locate stolen vehicles. We've used it to identify the direction of travel for homicide suspects and other suspects of violent crime, and ultimately been able to capture them probably in a shorter span of time than we otherwise would have without that technology.
So do these cameras take pictures of everyone's license plate that maybe passes through an intersection, regardless of whether you are a suspect in a crime or not?
Yes. And so it maintains that, I think, for 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. And then it's flushed from the system. And so, but that, that we think that that's a reasonable amount of time to maintain that data in order for it to be, to have some investigative value. And again, it is only taking a picture of probably the back bumper. And so certainly if there's a defect or a bumper sticker or something like that is very near the license plate, it would capture that as well. And there's a function where you could use that as a search term in order to look for that specific vehicle. Like, for instance, if you didn't know exactly what the license plate number was, but you knew that it has some very distinctive bumper sticker or something like that. And again, I think a very useful tool to solve crime and bring people to justice. And there's quite a network across the state and across the country. Really, kind of a universe, I think, of that Flock, I think, is probably the primary player in that universe. And so the fact that we have access to Flock, I think, gives us the opportunity to to investigate crimes beyond our borders. Now, certainly because of some concerns and challenges, we have limited our searches to the state of Colorado just recently since April 8th. And then we don't share our data beyond the state of Colorado now because of some current concerns about immigration situations and things like that.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, the April 8th time frame and what that looks like when you say you're not searching beyond?
So, as you probably are aware, we were looking to have City Council approve a new contract for Flock for 2 years. And some of the City Council members had identified some concerns and maybe even concerns that were brought to them by constituents about the safety of that data and the usefulness of that program and the concerns about the security of that data and the ability to use that data for unintended purposes, like targeting certain communities, using it for an immigration enforcement. And I think that there was sort of a theme that was mentioned, which is that we trust what Denver is doing and the way that Denver is not abusing the data, but we're not sure if we trust, say the state of Texas or something like that. And so in response to the concerns that we heard from council and the desire to be as protective of that data while still being able to for it to be useful for us in Denver and then our other law enforcement partners across the metro area, we decided to limit the ability for data to get out beyond the state, but then still have all of our metro law enforcement partners able to have access to that data.
So ICE and immigration enforcement do not have access to flock camera data from Denver?
They do not. They do not.
Because that seems to be what the big concern was for council members.
And a reasonable concern, but a concern that we were aware of. And so, in order for you to get access to our data, you have to ask for it. And we've never had a request from ICE to use our data. There's never been a request to use our data for the purpose of immigration enforcement. So
looking at other police departments in other counties, can they get a hold of our flock footage and share it with ICE? Say, for instance, does DougCo have access to that?
So DougCo does have access to the data, but it would be a violation of the user agreement to use it for a purpose other than for a criminal investigation. And obviously, immigration enforcement is not a criminal investigation. So that would be a violation of that use agreement that would put us in a position where we would then deny them access going forward. And we do regular compliance checks to make sure that no one is using the data inappropriately. And so far, all of our compliance checks have determined that there has been no inappropriate use of the data.
So the ACU has called the use of these cameras Orwellian. Do you understand your critics' complaints about the issues around surveillance and privacy?
I do understand the concern, and I think that there is, I think, a need to really weigh those concerns versus the need for public safety, and I think that there is an opportunity for us to be very careful and pragmatic about our use of the data, to be respectful of those concerns and not abuse it, and make sure that we are only using that data for criminal justice purposes.
What would happen if Denver stopped using flock cameras?
I think that we would significantly hamper our opportunities and our ability to fight crime. Not just in Denver, but throughout the metro area, because, we're not the only entity in Colorado that is seeing the effects of these cameras.
So I have to say, when the flock thing came up, I was initially under this impression that they were used to catch people who were speeding. But that didn't come up in the coverage of this conversation around flock. Is that right?
That's correct. They cannot be used for traffic enforcement.
Really? Okay. I guess I was confused about that because one of my personal concerns, and I know we heard this from readers and listeners too, is that speeding is a thing that people come across a lot in the city, and it's not being enforced through something like Flock. Is there anything being done about that?
About speeding?
Yeah.
Well, certainly there are, we have a photo radar program. We have.
That's totally different. The photo radar.
Totally
okay.
Yeah. So we are enforcing, safety concerns. We're just not using Flock to do it. In fact, Flock doesn't have the capacity to do it. I mean, they're capturing license plates. They're not, clocking speed. They're not doing any of those kinds of things. It's
just purely data collection.
That's correct.
But it's collecting data from all of us that are passing through these intersections every day. Okay. I also find it interesting, though, that you all have been doing these sort of what you've called sprints of enforcement on stuff like expired plates. Mm-hmm. Why is that a priority? Because I have a hard time understanding how that's a priority over, say, stopping people from speeding.
Well, I would not say that it's necessarily a priority. So about a year ago, instituted a policy that precluded us from engaging in low-level traffic stops. And I think, stopping a car for a freshly expired registration would, I think, be included in low-level, traffic stops. Stops that have absolutely nothing to do with traffic safety. And before I instituted that policy, I took a hard look at all of our data, and I identified that we were engaging in a lot of traffic stops that didn't necessarily have any kind of law enforcement outcome. There wasn't a citation issued. There wasn't an arrest made. There wasn't any kind of contraband that was recovered. Now, I will not go so far as to say that we wasted our time in conducting those traffic stops, because I do believe that there is utility in conducting traffic stops, but there is no study, no data out there that would suggest that just conducting traffic stops promotes safety, even traffic safety. What does promote traffic safety are stopping people and enforcing safety violations, speeding, disobedience to traffic signals, those kinds of things. And so those things we will continue to do and have.
This episode is brought to you by MultiPass. Proudly based in Denver and deeply rooted in the local event and creative scene, this ticketing platform was created by people who know events. From concerts and comedy shows to movie nights with goats and late night dance parties, you can find so much cool stuff to do across Denver thanks to MultiPass. And this isn't just like a place online to buy tickets. MultiPass has a unique community chat feature that opens up once you RSVP to an event. So that means you can connect directly with others going to that event and make new friends around a shared interest. How cool is that? And if you're someone who's putting on an awesome event, listen, MultiPass is just built different. They offer same-day payouts and revenue-sharing tools built in, which automatically splits ticket revenue between producers, performers, and promoters. MultiPass is designed to help everyone in the event ecosystem win. Learn more at multipass.com. That's multipass.com. This is a much better system than Ask a Punk, which is where you usually figure out where a show is. And then you say, what time is it? And they say, the show's at show o'clock. Don't ask me that. This episode is brought to you by the Edgewater Music Festival. Hey, music lovers. The 28th annual Edgewater Music Festival is happening Saturday, June 21st at Citizens Park in Edgewater from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Picture this. 2 stages, local bands, and loads of barbecue, beer, wine, and great blues, funk, and rock and roll. For just $10, you can hang out all day and enjoy bands for 8 hours, including Maybe Fern, Wildlove Tigress, the Duke Street Kings, Roots and Rhythm Band, and Hand Turkey. Want to go big? For $100, you can get a VIP pass for free food, free wine, free beer, and covered seating. Did you hear me, fellow Gen Xers? Covered seating. You can sit down for 8 hours. I feel like that's what we look for now in concerts. This year, Edgewater Music Festival president and founder Ranger Miller is raffling off a 2010 Harley Davidson. Get 10 raffle tickets for just $50 at bluesandbarbecue.com. Proceeds benefit Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver and other affordable housing projects. Check out bluesandbarbecue.com for all the deets. That's bluesandbbq.com for more details. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Connect with a trusted provider wherever you are in Colorado, right from your home, car, or office. Whether it's a cold, a minor injury, infection, or even a rash, Denver Health's virtual urgent care gets you the help you need. Rated 4.7 stars by over 100 patients on Google, it's a reliable way to feel better sooner. From your campsite. That's something Colorado people do. What if you get a bug bite in the woods? Virtual urgent care. Totally help you. You would know if you need to hustle your butt back to the city or if you can keep on your camping trip. I'm just thinking about people in Colorado doing Colorado things that I enjoy watching other people do, like camping. Denver Health is here for life's journey. Ready to make an appointment? Just head to denverhealth.org/virtual today. Most major insurance plans are accepted. Need care fast? Denver Health has you covered with virtual urgent care.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Let's switch gears and talk about this conversation around crime and violent crime in Denver. Do you remember a few months ago after the unfortunate stabbings downtown, you were standing next to the mayor and this really angry guy walked past and interrupted. And he shouted at you two about how dangerous downtown is and he said you were ruining the city. What did that feel like?
It really, I think, played into an understanding that the mayor and I both, I think, have come to recently, and that is that the perception of safety does not match the reality of safety. The reality is that Denver is a very safe city. The reality is that violent crime has been decreasing in Denver for a number of years. Now, it doesn't always feel that way. Certainly on the 16th Street Mall on the 11th and 12th of January, it didn't seem that way. But that signaled for us that we need to do more to address that perception. I think that the reality is that the likelihood that someone visiting Denver or living in Denver is going to be the victim of a violent crime is very low and continues to reduce every day. But their perception of how safe they feel in their city is different, obviously. And I think that perceptions are driven by what you see. So if you see open drug use, if you see unhoused individuals that are laying on the street, if you see that everything that you want to buy in your grocery store or your convenience store locked up, or your convenience store or grocery store, or maybe even the local restaurant has to close, and they're saying that they're doing that because of crime, I think that gives you the perception, well, maybe the city isn't as safe as I'm led to believe. And so, the mayor and I both recognize that, and I think have done things since then to really get to to that perception. And so that is why we put more officers in and around the 16th Street. That is why, all of our districts are, continuing to focus on where crime is occurring, but also focusing on where there are those quality of life challenges, and making sure that we're paying attention to those as well.
It's hard to change people's perceptions. I mean, we all experience things the way that we do in the world, but do you think that guy had a point?
Well, I think he had a point in that there is a belief out there that this isn't so safe. And, and I think that we are making great strides to change that perception. I think that the opening of 16th Street is going to go a long ways towards changing that perception, because there's activation and there's people out and they're enjoying themselves. And I think that that in and of itself, I think, deters people from bad acts. And I also think that some of those quality of life issues are less detectable.
So beyond putting more officers on the street. What do you think DPD is doing specifically to change that perception?
Again, being more responsive to those things that are concerning to people. Being more, we are, significant partners in the mayor's Road to Recovery effort, and so connecting people that have mental health challenges and drug abuse challenges, connecting them with services that can help. I think paying much more attention to retail theft. And making sure that we're working with the various businesses, whether it's a grocery store or a small business on the 16th Street Mall. Sorry, I wasn't supposed to say mall, but
it's okay. I'm doing it too still.
Yeah, but again, being more responsive to those concerns that aren't necessarily associated with violent crime, because we understand that drives perceptions and drives people's thoughts about this city.
It feels like a lot to balance if you're going after the things that people are perceiving to be dangerous when there may be actual crimes to stop.
It is a lot to balance. And I would say two things on that. I would say that, we seem to be successful. I mean, crime is reducing. I mean, violent crime, I think, is down 4% this year. I think property crime is down about 13%. So we are, I think, handling both of those types of crime. I'd also say that public safety is a shared responsibility, and so we ask our community partners to be good partners and help us keep this a safe city.
So I've noticed there's this growing minority of Denverites who are increasingly very loudly complaining about crime downtown. Obviously, you all are well aware of the anonymous Do Better Denver Instagram and Twitter account come to mind. They're constantly badgering DPD for information. What do you think of this loud minority? Well,
I mean, I understand that it's a minority. And I think specific to Do Better Denver, that's an entity that we have been engaged with for a while. Our engagement with them, giving them information to answer their questions and concerns became onerous. And I think a lot of their communication wasn't solution oriented. And so that's what caused us to no longer be responsive to them, because, we really want to focus on things that are solution oriented. We want to make sure that we're putting our focus, where it needs to be, and engaging with someone where that engagement becomes onerous. And, and at the end of the day, we were giving them data that they ultimately can gather on their own. We have a lot of open dashboards, and they know this. They understand that there are places to get answers to the majority of the questions that they're asking.
I know you mentioned that at some point, sometimes the responding to them feels onerous. Do you worry that sometimes, they might really have a point, and you all might be missing it because of the harsh approach they take?
Well, I mean, I would say this, that we do pay attention to what comes across Do Better Denver, and if there's something to learn, then we're certainly paying attention to that. And so while we may not have this back and forth exchange, we may not have this relationship where we're sharing information, we are paying attention to the things that they are advertising. And if it's something that we should be responding to, we are responding to that. And I would say beyond that, if their content becomes solution oriented, then we really will be paying close attention.
So I have a couple listener questions for you. We reached out to our audience and asked them what they wanted to know from you. Dana in Montclair asks, how about those, quote, bad apple cops? And why are there so many whose horrible behavior ends up costing Denver taxpayers and the city so much in lawsuit settlements in addition to all the court costs? How can you hopefully quickly decrease the number of those bad apple officers?
I appreciate the question, and I would maybe reframe that to say that there aren't a lot of bad apple cops. I think that certainly those small numbers of bad apple cops that we did have, and I want to emphasize did have, because I'm very quick to separate from someone that has committed a crime or has significantly violated a community member. That's a small number. And the reason why they are public is because we are transparent and we make that information public. As it relates to settlements, the overwhelming majority of those settlements are from lawsuits that were filed during the George Floyd protest era.
So Dan B., our friend from the Denver Gazette, asks, will you please make my job easier and stop encrypting the police scanner?
Yeah, I can appreciate the challenge that creates, but that was done for a number of years ago for safety reasons. And when I say safety, there's really kind of a couple of issues. One, I think that there is some sensitive information that belongs to the community. There's information about juveniles, information about victims' addresses, and protected victims of crime. So that I think that we need to protect by encrypting our radio channels. And also there's, the opportunity for our tactical operations to be communicated over the air. And so that was the reason for that. It wasn't to be secretive or anything like that, or to deny them opportunities to develop a story. And, I think that, that we are very active on social media, very active about blasting out exactly what's happening, answering questions when they're asked. And so, we think that we have done a lot to sort of overcome the challenge that we understandably created for the media by encrypting those radio channels.
So I have one last question. One of our listeners writes, I have a question for the chief. Graffiti, graffiti, graffiti. Walking through Rhino breaks my heart where there was once world-class street art that was untouched for years by the vandalism of graffiti is now covered in filth. I know there may be many serious issues, but a clean, well-kept space reduces crime. It seems as if the police can fix this issue with minimal resources. So I think their question is, has graffiti gotten worse, and what are you all doing to stop that?
So yes, I would say that we have seen graffiti increase within probably the last year, and certainly a concern. I think certainly something that again goes to or impacts that perception of safety. And so, we do have dedicated investigators that are assigned to investigate crimes of graffiti. So what I would say is anytime you see graffiti, to report that through 311, that is captured. That's a data point that that helps us direct our patrols. It helps us we can now investigate those crimes because now that data is captured and we can investigate it. I think our investigators are very adept at being able to tie strings of graffiti incidents together and holding somebody accountable. And again, when I said at the beginning that public safety is a shared responsibility, I think that part of that responsibility for a community is to call the police when they see something that's wrong.
Chief Thomas, thank you so much.
You bet.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why don't you take a minute to tell Do Better Denver that we'd love to have them on the show anytime. Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya!